Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. While most of the Separatist Alliance military was managed by dull and predictable commander droids, there were a few organic leaders that gave the Republic forces a massive headache on the battlefield. One of those leaders was the arch warrior known as Admiral Trench. He was an individual that was both feared and respected by Republic forces because of his command abilities and the fact that he's returned from death several times. We'll most likely see him again in the 7th and final season of the Clone Wars TV show, so today we're going to analyze what makes him such a great tactician and commander. In Star Wars, there are millions of different alien species and cultures, and so knowing your enemy's biological and cultural tendencies can give you quite a large advantage. This is why individuals like Grand Admiral Thrawn were so effective at defeating his enemies. He would oftentimes spend hours studying the art of the species he was about to fight. Now, the Harch were essentially humanoid tarantulas. They usually had 8 limbs, 6 eyes, and a very powerful brain that could handle all of that information and movement at once. This meant that the Harch were terrific at multitasking, and on the battlefield this meant that they were great at micromanaging troops, which is certainly a bonus when you're commanding a massive droid army with very little individual initiative and creativity. The Harch were also incredibly durable to physical damage. Like much smaller arachnids found here on Earth, their bodies were covered in a tough exoskeleton. This meant these aliens were much heavier than other humanoids of the same size. This also meant that the Harch needed incredibly strong muscles to move their massive weight around, making them very deadly in close-range combat. So yes, these were essentially everyone's worst nightmare, human-sized spiders. To make matters even worse, the Harch could naturally live for several centuries. Trench was said to have been over 200 years old by the time of the Clone Wars. This longevity meant that the Harch were more patient and wise than younger species. War is incredibly dangerous and unpredictable. For someone like Admiral Trench to have survived as long as he did meant that he was an extremely capable leader and had many times the battlefield experience of even the most senior human officers. This alone gave him a huge advantage against his much younger foes. Now, being at the top of any profession, whether you're a neurosurgeon, a general, or a Hollywood actor, means that you become isolated. Everyone who surrounds you most likely is an underling and is subservient to your every wish and command. The sense of power and lack of resistance from other people can be a disadvantage and lead to the creation of monsters like Bill Cosby or eccentrics like Steve Jobs, who usually had 1 or 2 fatal flaws, like eating a diet of only fruit. When it comes to a military leader at the top of their game, this can lead to dangerous and irrational behavior as well. Take General George S. Patton, for instance. He was a charismatic and brilliant leader who, by all accounts, was loved and revered by the men beneath his command. His aggressive style of command mirrored and then improved on the blitzkrieg style of German forces in the first years of the war, and he was more or less unstoppable in every campaign he participated in. There was very little doubt that General Patton was one of the most successful commanders in the US Army, and even the German military forces believed this as well, which meant that Patton made a great decoy during the Allied invasion of Normandy. But Patton's eccentricities ultimately led to his superiors disliking him and not trusting him. Patton believed that he was reincarnated from some of history's best generals and conveniently found a way to always disobey orders from high command in pursuit of victory and glory. This eventually would get him sidelined from various operations. Admiral Trench does not suffer from such hubris or personality flaws. He survived countless battles thanks to his discipline and also his very practical and analytical mind. Although he oftentimes views battles as games, he still took these games extremely seriously. Even though he's constantly proven himself to be a superior commander, Admiral Trench never underestimated his enemies throughout his entire career. One of the earliest times we see Admiral Trench engage in battle is during the Andoan Wars, somewhere around 57 to 39 BBY. This was a regional conflict located in the Lambda sector between a faction of Andoan free colonies and the despotic government of Secundus Ando. During this incredibly violent and bloody war, Trench established himself as one of the greatest Harch military leaders. The Republic and judicial fleet ultimately had to step in and intervene in this war because it was growing out of control. They ended up demilitarizing the entire Lambda sector, and this would go on to radicalize Trench against the Republic. Trench would then become a mercenary and fight for the Corporate Alliance, where he would protect shipping lanes from pirates and other criminal organizations. When the Corporate Alliance became engaged in a dispute over fuel prices with the Malastarians, they sent Trench with a corporate fleet to blockade the entire system. The Republic would send a massive fleet of privateers led by unofficial Republic military observers and Jedi, and they would attempt to break the blockade during what would be known as the infamous Battle of the Malastar Narrows. Leading the Republic forces was a young Captain Wolf-Ulerin from the local Quaiwar sector forces. Although Trench was heavily outnumbered, he managed to do a massive amount of damage against the Republic fleet and almost defeated them before Jedi reinforcements arrived and destroyed his flagship. Admiral Trench was believed to have been killed in the incident, but as we mentioned before, his species could endure quite a lot of punishment thanks to their hard exoskeleton. By the time the Clone Wars had started, Admiral Trench had developed a very healthy hatred for the Republic, who seemed to have thwarted him in every direction. Trench's ties with the Corporate Alliance eventually led him to be commissioned as an admiral within the new Confederacy Navy. He would take part in the invasion and blockade of Christophsis in the first year of the war. He was placed in command of the Separatist fleet, blockading the planet. Although tarantulas do not create webs, Admiral Trench was especially proficient at blockading planets and preventing people from coming or leaving. As we mentioned before, Harcher's brain is built to multitask, and so Admiral Trench was able to successfully micromanage his fleet to perfect efficiency, making the most out of his ships and their capabilities. The Republic forces trapped on the surface of Christophsis were running low on supplies and munitions, or were being hard-pressed by Separatist General Losum. Senator Bail Organa, who was organizing the relief efforts on the ground, was pushing for Republic reinforcements and relief supplies. Jedi General Anakin Skywalker first attempts to charge the Separatist blockade with his relief ships, escorted by Benedict-class Star Destroyers, but the overlapping fields of fires and deflector shields set up by Admiral Trench's fleet proved to be too difficult to overcome. The Republic withdraws their relief transports and fleet to the far side of Christophsis' moon. A less disciplined officer most likely would have broken their blockade and sent some of their ships to chase down the fleeing Republic ships. But Trench is patient and is satisfied with his victory, realizing that this was just round one of a prolonged attempt to break his blockade. He had the tactical advantage and would wait for the Republic to come to him and focus on recharging his weapons and shields instead. Like any good military leader, Trench makes it his job to find out what exactly the enemy is after. In this case, it's pretty simple. The Republic wants to save their ground forces, so Trench keeps a close eye on the remaining clone units on the surface of the planet. General Losum is pushing hard against the besieged Republic forces, and they're almost overrun. Trench knows that the Republic fleet hiding on the other side of the moon knows this as well, and is surprised that they haven't launched a second attempt against his blockade. Trench decides to goad the Republic into attacking his blockade before they gather the necessary resources by attacking the ground forces with a squadron of hyena bombers. But even this doesn't goad Anakin Skywalker, who's considered a very hot-headed general, into action, which seems a little bit off. Admiral Trench by this point realizes something is wrong and puts his fleet on high alert. He doesn't know when or how the Republic is going to attack him, but he knows that they will soon. Intuition is not something that can be taught. Some are born with it, and others will develop it after surviving dozens and dozens of battles, something that Admiral Trench has had the luxury to do. The Republic forces are up to something. Anakin and Admiral Wolf-Ulerin are attempting to break through the blockade in a stealth ship and momentarily reveal themselves in order to launch a salvo of proton torpedoes at Trench's bridge. Luckily, Trench's Invincible is already in high state of readiness, and its thermal shields quickly absorb the impact. Trench tries to hit the cloaked ship with his own torpedoes, but the clones fire off flares at the last second, saving them from destruction. But now the game is up. Trench knows what he's facing, a cloaked ship. Drawing on his very rich combat experience, Trench knows that stealth ships can be tracked by magnetic lock torpedoes, and so he waits again for the Republic ship to appear and fires upon it again. Now the problem is, Trench isn't facing just any Jedi, he's facing the madman known as Anakin Skywalker, who ends up leading the very torpedoes Trench just fired right back at him, causing the Separatist ship's bridge to be destroyed. It's a pretty extreme and ridiculous move, and only Anakin Skywalker would be brave and stupid enough to pull it off, and Admiral Trench for once is outsmarted. By firing his torpedoes, Trench had to lower his own shields, leading to his own demise. Or so the Republic thought. For the second time, Trench escapes near death, although this time around he loses all three of his left arms and parts of his face and left eye, which he has immediately replaced with cybernetics. Trench seems to appreciate the cover of death. He does not yearn for the spotlight, and he really likes surprising his enemies by reappearing in a battle much later on in the war. The next time we see Trench, he's leading the Separatist defense against a Republic assault on Ringo Vinda's orbital shipping dock. Trench, who is always paying close attention to his enemy forces, witnesses one of the Republic clones executing their own Jedi general. Trench immediately passes this information on to his superiors, which ultimately allows Palpatine and Dooku prevent the discovery of Protocol 66. Trench once again shows that he lets nothing escape his attention in the middle of a hectic battle. That, of course, is not the last we'll see of Admiral Trench. In the 7th season of the Clone Wars, he'll once again lead the Confederacy's defense, this time on the planet of Anaxis, and he'll use some more brilliant strategies to keep the clones at bay. So keep an eye out for this cyborg spider and pay close attention to how he uses every piece of information around him to his advantage. So there you have it, guys. That is our little profile of Admiral Trench, one of the most formidable leaders within the Separatist Alliance. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button so you don't miss out on the rest of our content. And as usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.